Quebec's new language law, Bill 96, is now in effect. It brings about some sweeping changes, including rules that make it harder to access government services in English. Hilary Johnstone is on that story. What is changed as of today, Hilary?
Well, Heather, it's a bit of a long list, really. And as you say, a lot of this is aimed at government services, which will now be offered mostly in French. And the whole idea here, the reason why this was brought in, and today is the one-year anniversary of this bill receiving royal assent, was to protect the French language. But since then, there has been a lot of controversy. There have been protests. There have been charter challenges as well. But if we go through some of what's going to come into effect today, so yes, government services are going to be offered in French only, except for what are often called historic Anglophones. And in the past, Quebec's Premier François Legault has described the historic Anglophone community in Quebec as being those people who learned English in English schools throughout Canada. New immigrants are only going to have about a 6-month window here where, yes, they'll be able to access services in other languages, but after 6 months, the expectation is that this happens in French. Small businesses are going to have to declare what proportion of their employees are unable to communicate in French. And when they talk about communicating in French, this is whether or not you can perform some basic tasks of your job in French. Perhaps serving customers in French would be an example there. Legal documents and contracts are going to need to be done in French. It's also going to give expanded powers to Quebec's l'Office québécois de la langue française. So this is Quebec's language office. Healthcare services, though, are going to be exempt. That is something that we've heard from the province in the past little while, that they do say that healthcare services will be exempt. But yes, this has drawn up a lot of criticism, whether you're talking about international students, for example, who may want to come to Quebec to study, but then perhaps want to stay there longer term. What's it going to mean for a province that is currently experiencing a labor shortage? Daycares, for example, are one area where there is a labor shortage at this point. What's it going to mean for those small businesses as well? So a lot of questions here, Heather, and there are some challenges, legal challenges, that are still working their way through the courts at this point.
Obviously contentious, and the fight over this legislation has been bitter for sure, Hilary. What kind of reaction is there now that it's about to be enforced?
Well, for one example, something that we're hearing from one English-speaking group here is that they do believe that this isn't going to sort of achieve its intended goal. They say that, yes, Quebecers and English-speaking Quebecers do understand the importance of learning French. They don't think that this is going to encourage people to do so. Instead, they say that this could be a hassle for a lot of people. Here's what we've heard from one group.
An additional burden, unnecessary burden for small businesses. Very complicated, because who's going to evaluate who speaks how much and what? This is happening during a time when there's labor shortage, there's pressure, prices, inflation, and so on, lots of pressure on small businesses. And this is an issue not just for English-speaking community, but for all of Quebec economy and society.
And small businesses, of course, Heather, that's someone else who we're hearing from at this point. Here's what we heard from one chef.
One of our fears is that it's going to make hiring people more difficult, because I think a lot of small businesses now are struggling with labor shortage, and the fact that immigrants now have 6 months when they get to Quebec, that all communication has to be in French with them. When they want to come to the country, Quebec is going to ask them how good their French is, and I think it's just going to make stuff harder for us to find employees.
So, Heather, like we say, this is still making its way, some of these challenges through the courts, but the Quebec government does maintain that the reason that they are doing this is to protect the French language within the province.
Hilary Johnstone, thank you very much.